So, if I can have your attention, we are going to go live via a stream to participants all across the globe at 10:30. So we've got a little bit of time, so maybe we can continue our dialogues, but I'm going to give you a kind of countdown to live with 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, and then we're live. So, yes. Oh, we're live now. Oh, we're live now. Okay. So welcome, everyone. Well, that's really flustered everything. So, time for a human revolution. The human revolution of Max, your MC, and then the human revolution of all of us today. So, welcome to everybody who's joined us online from over 600 people across the globe. So really, thank you so much for being here, and a big welcome from us at Taplow Court. Thank you. So, this morning, we are going to take an in-depth look at the power of dialogue and at the impact of individual human revolution upon the world at large. So I would like to start by welcoming Suzanne Pritchard, co-chair of SGI Europe.
Good morning, everyone, and on behalf of SGI, I'm delighted to welcome you to Taplow Court for today's event. Whether you're here in person or joining us online, thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure for us to have collaborated with our friends in the Club of Rome to celebrate the anniversaries of two significant books, No Limits to Learning and Before It Is Too Late, and to build on the friendship between co-founder and president of the Club of Rome, Aurelio Peccei, and president of Soka Gakkai International, Daisaku Ikeda. Their friendship for almost a decade, between 1975 and 1984, was based on dialogue, discussing the crucial problems of the day and looking for a fresh approach to resolve them. As we will see in the short video that will follow, the resulting text, published as Before It Is Too Late, is a rich overview of the problems that were relevant in the mid-80s and even more important today. The dialogue, as we've heard, looks at three relationships: the relationship of the human being within themselves, the relationship of human being to human being, and the relationship between human being and nature. And more importantly, they look at the results that arise when these relationships break down. Daisaku Ikeda voices the Buddhist view that the underlying cause of this breakdown is the fundamental delusion inherent in life, which prevents us from seeing the preciousness and the interconnection of all life and phenomena. And he further expresses that the source of this fundamental delusion is the three poisons of greed or unbridled acquisitiveness, anger, which arises as the result of hurt and despair and erupts as aggression and violence, and foolishness, which causes one to see the false for the true and the seeming for the real, so obscuring the true integrated and interconnected nature of life. One aspect of which is that these three relationships are not separate in any way, but totally interlinked. Based on the integrated and holistic view of all life phenomena, therefore, The energy of the three poisons is not viewed as something to be eradicated. Rather, through the process of human revolution, such energy can be transformed and redirected to create value. As Daisaku Ikeda wrote shortly before his death in 2023, to put it simply, the Buddha's enlightenment lies not in eradicating earthly desires, but rather infusing them with compassion and wisdom. It is a matter of changing the turbid river of earthly desires, of greed, anger, and foolishness, into a pure stream of compassion and wisdom, of turning negative waves of life into waves of goodness. In the dialogue itself, Daisaku Ikeda defines the human revolution as, quote, a way to change the inner nature of each human being, and in this way bring about improvements in society as a whole. And elsewhere, he has said, there are all sorts of revolutions, political, economic, scientific, artistic. Each has its own significance and often necessity. But no matter what one changes, the world will never get any better as long as people themselves, the guiding force and impetus behind all endeavors, remain selfish and lacking in compassion. In that respect, human revolution is the most fundamental of all revolutions, and at the same time, the most necessary revolution for humankind. Therefore, a great human revolution in just a single individual will help achieve a change in the destiny of a nation, and further will enable a change in the destiny of all humankind. So with these perspectives, and in the face of the challenges confronting our world today, this topic of inner transformation and human revolution becomes even more vital. Very soon, we will start to explore it. And I'm sure that the panelists and facilitators who have prepared so hard for today's event will lead us on a fascinating and inspiring journey of understanding, not only about what human revolution is, but also how we might embark upon it ourselves. I hope you will agree, based on this, today's event, this theme, it's time for a human revolution, is of huge significance. Whatever our beliefs or our views of the steps that might be needed to take in our world today, our discussions here, based on the tools of dialogue, which we will be able to put into practice during the day, will certainly show us the power that is within every individual. And that will be valuable not only for ourselves, but also for wider society and the precious planet where we live. Thank you all very much again.
Celebrating 40 years since publication, Before It Is Too Late, is more than just a book. It is a dialogue, a call to action, and a meeting of minds between two remarkable individuals, Daisaku Ikeda and Aurelio Peccei. Daisaku Ikeda, president of Soka Gakkai International, was a Japanese Buddhist philosopher who dedicated his life to advocating for human dignity and peace through dialogue. Aurelio Peccei, co-founder of the Club of Rome, was an Italian industrialist and visionary philanthropist who advocated the urgent need to rethink endless economic growth on a finite planet. Over 10 years and 5 dialogues, Ikeda and Peccei discussed how our exploitation of nature is unsustainable and how a lack of respect leads to conflict and division. The fundamental imperative is to transform society so that it can do more with less energy. It is our responsibility to protect the global environment, which is the basis of all life, including human, for coming generations. Through dialogue, they found common faith in nature and human revolution.
21世紀の地球に残された驚くべき資源がまだある。その最大の資源とは人間自身の生命である。無尽なる知恵とエネルギー、この力を最大に開発していく人間革命という哲学、これが人類の最高の希望となる。これを忘れてはね。この一点で博士と私の見解は完璧に一致した。
Ikeda and Peccei urge us to awaken our higher potential to achieve a more peaceful and sustainable future. Man's most pressing task today is the elevation and reformation of his inner spiritual life. This is what I call the human revolution. It is within our power to turn the tide. Peccei concludes, since the human revolution is the key to positive action, leading to the adoption of a new course and the revival of human fortunes, we must do whatever is in our power to help set it in motion, before it is too late.
Thank you. So I would now like to invite Carlos Álvarez Pereira, who is the Secretary General of the Club of Rome. Welcome, Carlos.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you who are here and those who are following us online for being with us in this very exciting moment, part of a wonderful journey. I want to bring on my behalf, the behalf of the Club of Rome at large, and also, and in particular, my colleague and co-president Sandrine Dixon-Leclève, who would have loved to be here with us today, our gratitude for the hospitality in this incredible place and for the work we are doing together to look into the future, building on the best of the past, which is something we have to remember. Look into the past with a fresh lens, because there are so much richness in the past of all human cultures from the beginning of times that we can use and develop to address the future, a future of hope. And this is, I think, that would be very close to what Aurelio Peccei would be saying now if he was here. So I will share with you a few thoughts about the life, the extraordinary life of Aurelio. Any human life is made of particular moments when somebody realizes something that he was not seeing. A second before, he was not seeing that. A second later, he cannot not see it for the rest of his or her life. You know, these moments where a blind spot is eliminated, which is definitely part of what we call a human revolution. Aurelio had several of those. He was born in 1908 in Turin, in Italy, and he studied economics, and he started doing probably the most reasonable thing you can do if you are from Turin and you studied economics, which was to start working for Fiat. A very important moment in his life was his first mission to China, representing Fiat. So very down to earth. He was a business person, a very practical person. So very down to earth. As a business person, he went to a commercial mission to China when he was 27 years old, 1935. That's long ago. It was not so usual to connect with China. although, of course, the Italians had a tradition of centuries of doing that. So he built on the steps of Marco Polo and visited China and did a lot of good business for Fiat, but he also profited from the occasion to enter in contact with the very rich Asian traditions. He was extremely curious. If you have to take for you something about Aurelio Peccei, probably it would be his incredible curiosity and his availability to change over time, to change his opinions, and to accept, to navigate in a space of, oh, what I've been learning is not what I knew. It's different and sometimes uncomfortable, and sometimes it changed completely my mind. So that's what he did. And in that moment, 1935, he profited from occasion to learn about Confucianism, about Taoism, and of course also about Buddhism. I think this is not so well documented, but I think that moment of encounter between Aurelio Peccei coming from a very rich Western culture, Italian, but a secular culture, and the encounter with the Asian traditions explains plenty of things. It certainly explains how they connected so well with Daisaku Ikeda, but I think that explains more than that. That explains that in 1968, the Club of Rome started with a perspective which was and is still quite untypical, this perspective of, oh, we think about the world, all of it, we think about it long term, we're caring for the evolution and the future of humanity long term, and we do that from a perspective of interdependency, interconnectedness, systemic, holistic, which is still untypical. I think the origins of that were in that visit to China. There were other moments in his life. One particular moment which you don't find often in the lives of business, leaders today, was that he lived, of course, in Italy in the 30s and 40s, tragic times, and he decided to engage because he was not only a business person but a deep humanist. He decided to engage in one of the movements of resistance against fascism and Nazism. And he was jailed, and he was tortured. And that was certainly a moment, very difficult moment, which marked also, for the good, his perspective of the world. Instead of anger and resentment, I think that experience made him an even deeper humanist. And there is another moment where after the war, he starts doing business for Fiat again and later for Olivetti in a completely different region of the world in Latin America, and particularly in Argentina. We have some people from Argentina here. And I'm proud to say that the actual discourse, which was the starting point in 1965 of the creation of the Club of Rome and everything which came later, was said in Buenos Aires, in Spanish. So you see the connection, how he connected with different cultures, and how he lived with that. He carried that with him, He appreciated that richness, and that led him to ask plenty of questions about the future of humanity. Initially from a very optimistic perspective, because he was asking, okay, we have a model of human development in the so-called developed world. How will this work for the whole of the world? And that was the initial drive for the creation of the Club of Rome. Again, very untypical, a club of debate, a space. Non-organization used to say we are a non-organization and we don't take positions. Actually, of course, we take very strong positions, which is to look at the future of humanity. But with a multiplicity, and I would say we say today, a pluriversality of perspectives. And another tipping point where what he learned challenged very much his previous opinion was when the people, the team responsible for the development of the model and the simulations of the limits to growth brought the results. Because he didn't think, it's not, Aurelio Peccei didn't have that idea of, oh, we have planetary limits and we will face collapse. He was never anything close to a doomsdayer. He was exactly the opposite, always bringing hope. And then he realized, because of the work done by the MIT team of the limits of growth, oh, we have an issue, and we will face, if we don't change our course, we will face a very existential issue. And that led him to go in more depth on the question. Curiosity, challenging yourself, your own opinions, that led to No Limits to Learning, published in 1979, and of course, to Before It Is Too Late, published the year of his passing away in 1984, looking for responses. And those responses have led to new questions, and those questions are leading to new responses. And here we are today, where we are trying in the Club of Rome of today, which went through a revolution, a human revolution in 2018, 50 years after its creation, among other things by electing two ladies, co-presidents, for the first time in the organization, Sandrine Dixon de Clèves and Mampela Rampelli. But one of the things we did was to try to pay tribute, to honor the legacy of Aurelio Peccei and the legacy of the club at large. And this was the origin for the Fifth Element program that we created 2 years ago, where this activity together with Soka Gakkai sits. And in that program, what we're asking is, how do we engage in mutual learning and in mutual transformation and in mutual metamorphosis across the chasms of modernity, the chasm of separation, of fragmentation, across generations, across scientific disciplines, across cultures, Africa and Europe, East and West, and across sectors of society, while we have, each sector working with a specific logic, business, government, science, all of them with their own specific logics, which make sense within our bubbles, and altogether, it doesn't make sense at all, because we are on a suicidal path. So our own way of honoring his tribute, and also the tribute of Daisaku Ikeda, is to inquire in a human-centered perspective, inviting people as people, not as stakeholders, not as CEO, president, minister, whatever, as people. Inviting people to reconnect with their humanity, because that's the only way to create, in our understanding, the human revolution we need. Mutual transformation across chasms of separation, of fragmentation, defragmenting ourselves in order to find different and hopefully long-lasting responses to the eternal quest that we have, which is about both the meaning of our existence on Earth and what is a good life. Knowing that what is usually defined as a good life in our consumerist, extractivist, exploitative society is leading us to the suicide of the species. But we cannot present that just as a vision of collapse to people. By the way, billions of them are already on the other side of collapse. We have to present them something which can make them feel hopeful, which can get them out of helplessness and feed them with hope. And that hope, in our view, and this is still very abstract, but this is why we are working with Soka Gakkai and with many others, how to lend that response. The response being the meaning of our presence on earth and what is a good life is to reconnect with the other, to reconnect with the web of life, to realize that we are just part of it and we can live well in harmony and prosperity with the ecosystem if we just change our mindset, if we achieve this human revolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. So now we will watch a video created by the Club of Rome.
Principles of learning that are going to help us to learn our way through to the next generation where we want to go and to overcome the challenges that were highlighted in the systems modeling work of MIT at the time. Immediate interest in different places in the world to manifest no limits to learning.
A vast mankind, humankind, which will have to decide all together where we want to go, where we may go.
What I appreciate about the No Limits to Learning book is that they are actually talking about contextual learning and learning within contexts. You know, there's the frustration of knowing that for a long time this knowledge has been there, and still the way we talk about it, the way we try to enact it is completely caged in the same processes we think we're trying to change.
It was about creating the system conditions for profound, thoughtful, human-engaged learning.
Right, so we will now have a panel discussion, and this will be led by Dr. Louis Klein, who is the Dean of European School of Governance and Secretary General of the International Federation for System Research. Louis will be joined by Lucy Atala, Deputy Executive Director of UNESCO Most Bridges, Dr. David Zanvliet, Professor, Faculty of Education, Ria Carther, an educator, and Matteo Bordin, PhD student and board member of Student Young Pugwash. So over to you, Louis.
Hello, and a warm welcome here in the audience and in the live stream wherever on the globe you are. My name is Louis Klein. I'm from the International Federation for Systems Research. I'm the Secretary General, which makes me, well, a twin of Carlos, and only our mother can tell us apart. We're here on the podium to deepen our understanding of what a human revolution may be. An understanding that, following Buddhist principles, will be mutually arising as well as it is impermanent. What a human revolution is, we do not find in books. It is not written for all times. All books are an inspiration, a question, to have that conversation which allows us to reconnect with our understanding what it means to be human. A shared understanding grows from co-reflected lived experiences. It's a dialogue. And I like to suggest a dialogue here on stage, a dialogue that is tamkeen suffused. Tamkeen is an Arabic word that indicates the potential for co-flourishing. A dialogue that unfolds in the mirror of co-flourishing, of the seed meeting its favourable conditions, out of which that beauty grows, life grows, and all that comes with it. I'm a scientist, so I would characterize a tamkeen suffused dialogue as an experience-based, relationship-oriented, co-created and co-facilitated process of inquiry, learning and understanding, embedded in epistemic humility, trusting our human potential, trusting our humanity, and realizing the essentiality and existentiality of love. That's a mouthful of a sentence, isn't it? However, it touches upon an experience that we all share, that is the conversation that we have with a good friend, probably later in the bar, where we meet, where we share what happened last week, what we had to suffer, or what all the beautiful moments. And in that conversation, we co-reflect lived experience, and out of that grows a shared understanding of who is us in this world, our being and becoming. It's as simple as that. This is where we want to go today, in a conversation, a dialogue, that rather resembles the meeting in the bar, the dialogue amongst friends, and not a role play of representatives of institutions on a podium, pushing their messages, the 3 points that their staff said, oh yeah, you need to get that across, but to explore together. Oh, trap you, to explore together our understanding of what it means, a human revolution. And to really get into it, and I have a long list of titles and who's present here on stage, but imagine me coming into the bar, and there sits a group of 4. I don't know them, so we'll ask them, who are they? And I start to my left and say, oh, who are you? Yes, you.
I'm David. I like to ride my bicycle.
Are you that David who wrote a book on poetry?
I think so.
All right. Who are you?
I'm Matteo. And I'm really passionate about science, physics in general, about science, also literature, a bit about poetry too.
Wonderful. Who else do we have in the room?
I'm Ria, and I'm a student and a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Lucy.
You must be Lucy then.
I am definitely Lucy. And I'm an anthropologist.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so very much. I was wondering about this human revolution and what it is. So I'm really curious to learn more about where that happens, or where you recognize it in your life and what you do. And may I ask you, Lucy, to lead the
So, well, you know, being here and being a non-Buddhist, I feel infected by the positivity and the opportunities that have just sort of flowed forth from people. And before I came here, the idea of a human revolution made me slightly uncomfortable because it felt quite aggressive. Yeah, but I've talked to people and I can see them, and I feel a bit different about it now, although as an academic I must say that words are important and they do make a difference. Can I keep talking?
Sure.
Good. So if there is a system, and there is a system, and when there are systems, there are always flaws in those systems, and they're usually understood as inefficiencies or sort of problems to be solved. Well, I think that they are like cracks that can be used to prise open a system, to see what's articulating it, the logic underneath, upholding it, what is motivating it. And that's the opportunity. Those are the places, those cracks in a system are the opportunities for us to look for. And I'd just like to, if I can, continue. Can I? Am I allowed? Thank you. With one example from anthropology that sort of happened in the 1990s. So we all know there's one world, right? Do we agree there's a world? One. We're all on it. But we also all know that everybody sees the world a bit differently. And we know this because of cultures and worldviews and so on. Now, anthropologists have spent a lot of their time going to far-off places and collecting information about these different worldviews. And a lot of these worldviews understand the world, nature, the environment very differently. That world is populated with ancestors as rocks, rivers as spirits, parents as trees, cousins as possums, and all sorts of things. And anthropologists have come back from their travels and said, well, they believe this. You know, this must be some kind of metaphor. This must be some way to understand or put... Oh, excuse me. Someone's trying to stop me talking. No. Meaning into life, until somebody said, hold on, what if they're right? What then? What is the world? What are we doing to the world? If the rivers are our kin, are our family, what are we doing? That was a crack that was opened by someone. We're still discussing it, of course. But what if you can find that crack so that you can open up the logic, to think again, to see the world anew? I've said enough.
Thank you so very much. Yeah, as we would have it in the bar, applause after every speaker.
Where's the beer?
Well, yeah, it's coming. There's a long queue over there. Matteo,
I was willing to connect with what she said, because I think a beautiful thing from your perspective. It's a bit of a historical perspective that we may miss a bit. One of the most beautiful points I've read in the book of Dialogue with Peccei, Ikeda, I read many years ago, but I read it again for this conference, is that they provide a beautiful historical perspective of where we are now, what is humanity. And they compare from the life of the Earth to a week. And they say the life appeared like around half of Wednesday, and humankind, like the hominid species, or different kind of species, and then Homo sapiens is one of them, appeared like around Saturday evening, if I'm not wrong. And then there was like the longest time when nothing happened, really slow evolution, slow thing happening, until the last couple of seconds of Sunday evening, where industrial revolution just happened, and then we are not anymore animals afraid of nature, but we are some kind of semi-gods, like dominating nature, we're exploiting nature. I think this kind of historical perspective is really useful to understand where we are now, to have a bit of a more and a word dialogue of what human evolution is and what direction humankind may take from now on. And as a scientist, I think it's also important from my perspective I was wishing to give from my perspective a bit of what happened to science. Why now we're this kind of semi-god, because of science and technology. And as a wannabe academic, I would like to have a PhD student, so trying to be, who knows. I want to bring my take on this, my views on this, so I'm not a historian of sciences, so please, this is just my point of view. But I do believe that if we look back to science, it was back in a couple thousand years ago, we were like looking to stars for navigation, we were looking for herbal medicines, we were looking to plants, and everything was for the community. It was just like science was not even a discipline, it was just like a way of living according to nature, just like studying nature. What we don't know was gods or whatever, mystical entities. And slowly and steadily we develop our understanding till like Renaissance or like the last century, the last millennia, where science becomes natural philosophy, becomes more philosophy. Before we became something for very wealthy people that had a lot of time to spend not cultivating the land, like seeing stars, doing theories, trying to explore things with math, and writing very cumbersome books. So that was what science last millennium, like in the last centuries. It was very wealthy people just exploring, doing the philosophical theories. It was kind of fancy, interesting. We found out that we are not the center of the universe. We just revolve around a star. That was pretty good understanding of our universe. So something was discovered, yeah, it was really interesting, but it's incomparable to what happened in the last 200 years. After industrial revolution, even science became industrialized. And now science is an industry. There are companies investing more in science. There's been the industrial revolution and the technological revolutions that radically changed our way of living in the last 150 years. Computers are totally normal today. Smartphones are totally normal today, but they're around for like 40 years, 50, 60 maybe. Internet, not that long. And we are kind of like already acquainted with these kind of things, but they are like brand new and they connecting the world to a level that was unimaginable before. So I just want to put on scale these kind of new tools that we have. And just to mention, yesterday was announced the Nobel Prize for physics was for artificial intelligence. Another huge thing that's happening today. So this is not over, this is still going. And this is a very exciting thing in my opinion. I'm a scientist, I love science, I think this is super interesting. But there are also drawbacks of this. There are bringing where we are now. There is being very unexperienced people dealing with things that we don't know how to use very well, and they are damaging our heart. They're bringing us on the wrong path, as Peccei indicated, discussed many times. So I'm not saying that science is perfect. I think that science is very exciting, and it's inevitably linked with humankind, and we have evolution. But maybe we have to rethink a bit science. Maybe human revolution for a scientist step through thinking what is science for this century, what is science for the next centuries, what is science for the next millennium, what is the role of science for the 21st century challenges, what is the new role of scientists in this century. So I'd like to feed the discussion with this question.
Thank you so very, very much, Matteo. Raya, yes. Where in your work you recognize a human revolution?
So I think first I'd really like to speak to what Lucy said about this idea of kinship with nature. And so in the dialogue, Peccei talks about how education and learning are two different things, right? And I think that's so significant because Ikeda's idea of human education is much closer to the idea of learning than it is education. And when you spoke about rivers and the other aspects of nature, I think one thing that we've really forgotten how to do in learning is inspire this idea of wonder. Right? I remember I think I was in my early 20s, maybe my late 20s, when I realized whales sing to each other in communication, and I have never ever been able to get over this fact. Right? I think it's incredible. There are so many things about nature that we can inspire our children to see and understand in great detail. And of course, my friend Gary yesterday, my new friend Gary, was telling me about imagination as well, and how we're losing the capacity to imagine. And I think these are two very, very important things when we're considering any kind of learning, whether we're children, whether we're adults. If we don't sustain that idea of, wow, that awe, how are we going to feel this profound sense of connection? And why would we want to preserve something we don't feel a profound sense of connection with? And I think that's a really big question that needs asking. And it's also this idea of creative coexistence that Ikeda talks about. But another question, and I had more questions. I have more questions than answers, as you see. My other question was, as a teacher, how can we actively really teach or aid teachers in their human revolution? Because as a teacher, I had to be taught, I had to be taught that a human revolution is a thing. I had to come into my own spirituality and learn from my reading, and it was an active process. And I think we need to recognize that maybe it's something that we need to aid each other with. It's not simply just us doing all the work, which it is, the major part of that is, but it's also about teaching each other. And it amazed me every time I went into a classroom that I would be expected to rectify the wrongs of, or the short-sightedness of 15 generations in a 90-minute window. How is that possible? It's really not possible, right? And I think, again, Ikeda says that the humanity of a teacher represents the core of the educational experience. So the human revolution of a teacher can have profound consequences for the world, for generations to follow. And I think this term professional development is so devoid of the personal, as you can see, it's called professional development. But the more we divest the idea of the personal from the professional, we lose sight of the fact that teachers are human beings with fears, with this great vulnerability. Every time you walk into a classroom, I'm sure all the teachers in the crowd will know, it's incredible how we expect teachers to perform miracles every day without recognizing that they are whole human beings, and that human revolution can be aided. And the final thing I just want to share is, can we really, again, a question, can we really nurture the greater self in a child? Again, Ikeda talks about, the greater and the lesser self. And Peccei actually says in the dialogue, and I really love this, and it resonated with me so much, because he says, why do we have this all-pervasive need to put ourselves into, to define ourselves by nationality, right? One question that he asks. And he speaks of this idea of multivalence, where each person there's so much actually that we can identify with that unites us. The arts, poetry, music, love, compassion, but we choose time and time again in our homes, in our academic communities and I get that belonging is a very strong thing, but who are our children before we put them into these silos of nationality, race, class, caste, gender, everything that we can imagine. And I think that question needs to be asked if we are to really think about a kind of world where we tell children that you can extend your humanity to other people, you can extend your humanity to yourself, but it's a conscious effort. It's not going to come, just out of nowhere. And for our children to be agents of their own human revolution, I think it's very, very important for us to be more curious. And Carlos has been talking about questions, the Club of Rome and the importance of questions. As little children, we have tons of questions. As adults, we feel like we're responsible for giving answers. And I, for one, have really lost the capacity to. My husband reminds me of this quite often. He's probably laughing on the live stream. But he says, you should ask more questions, right? And it's difficult as an adult because I feel like I know everything, or I'm meant to know everything. Definitely don't. Okay. But just saying. So I think, again, this capacity to ask questions, of ourselves is what will lead us to our greater selves and then lead us to this idea of human revolution. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
What about your poem? You should read your poem.
Maybe after you're done.
No,
I don't want to take away your...
You go now.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to read a poem.
Okay, yes.
We're part of a secret poet society.
That's right.
So I'm a trained ecologist, but I've been an educationalist for the last 26 years. And I wrote a poem several years ago as I was trying to make sense of my own life as a scientist, educationist, wannabe poet, artist, trying to reclaim that other half of my brain. So this poem is called The Rediscovery. So you look for, there's going to be 3 key words: economy, ecology, and ecumeny. Those are the 3 eco words. To rediscover home, but what would that mean? Concepts ancient and new, though not clearly seen. Household can be home, so sheltered and clean. A managed economy, though not always green. Then ecology of home, this deepens the scene. Relations in place, and things in between. To inhabit this home, a true ecumene, life and love safely inside, a future serene. So that's the rediscovery. So I work with a lot of teachers, and you know, if I were in the pub and someone came up to me and said, well, what do you do? You know, rather than being an academic and saying, well, I would tell them, well, I try to de-school teachers. That's what I do. And they, what do you mean? And I said, well, they have to realize that learning just doesn't happen in the classroom. It's happening at home with the family. It's happening on the way to school. It's happening in the community. It's happening in the forest. And I'm in the enviable position now, you know, being a tenured professor and everything. I can push back, and I don't teach on campus at all. I teach in the field entirely, and I bring student teachers out into the local community, into indigenous communities, into the forest, and we learn from each other, and we talk in circles, and we ask questions, and we explore. And it's been like this beautiful career that I've had where I'm a professional learner. I'm not a teacher at all, I'm just a facilitator. We go out and nature has so much to teach and the community has so much to teach. And I've really been enjoying that. And a few years ago, I got to join this special club called the UNESCO Chairs. And you know, we had to, I had to like write this big proposal about what I would do. And so I came up, I was searching for a term, and I really like connected with Lucy what you were sharing, because the term I'm using for my chair is biocultural diversity. Not biodiversity, biocultural diversity. And this idea acknowledges that humans and cultures arise out of unique situations around the world. Culture is an expression of how to live well in a particular place. And so when you take that idea, then place becomes really powerful as a teacher. And you know, the university says, well, you teach that environmental education course and you teach it in Haida Gwaii, an indigenous community. Well, I also teach it in Indonesia. And they say, well, that's the same course. But it's not at all the same course because it's a different place. And the local knowledge, the indigenous knowledge is quite different because the local conditions are different. So this is like my revolution about like how to learn from community and so on. And the last piece that I will share, I'm here also not only representing UNESCO chairs and my university, but I'm representing the World Environmental Education Congresses, that network. And I would say that's really a service role that I have, but I've really valued being part of that network because it's kind of an anti-hegemony of North American values. We have, like when I attend those conferences or work with local people, there are these underrepresented voices, from the developing world and from other places where they've been silenced by, I heard this term, the Anglosphere, right? Australia, Canada, US, and UK seems to be like the only ones that have an environmental voice. So trying to privilege those other voices because, diaspora communities, indigenous communities, they have a lot to say and a lot of solutions. So that in a nutshell, that's been my journey, and I really feel honored to be here with all of you today, so thank you. Yeah, you can read your poem.
Can I speak? Can I speak?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to circle back to the idea of questions and logic, actually, because we all assume that logic is sort of motivating our thinking. And alongside that, we all live in our own cultural logic, which is something that you were speaking to. And while that cultural systems work in context, they are all built on assumptions that often don't follow through. So the systems that we create are built on a massive pile of assumptions. So when we talk about questions, we need that really honest interrogation of our own assumptions to be able to get into that and to unlock it. So when somebody said, "What if those people are correct?" that immediately broke the assumption that the Euro-American Occident logic of, well, we're right, we know because we've got science, sort of crumbled in front of everybody and broke the world for a lot of people. Well, this is what questions need to do, not to find solutions, but to break the assumptions. In fact, the solutions will sort of come. A lot of indigenous people say, don't ask questions. I was brought up with a father who said, question everything. So I did, and I became an academic, right? So here I am. Now I work with indigenous people, and they say, you don't need to question anything. Just look at the world. It tells you. Just wait. It tells you. Even a story doesn't have to have an end. So it's this pile of assumptions. Even your questions will be built on assumptions. That's the kind of interrogating, the bright light in your own eyes that you need to do when you think about, why am I asking that question? Where did that question come from? What is that built on? That's what will break things open and allow us to come up with new ideas. And that might be personal ideas about who you want to be, or ideas about what the world is that we want to live in together, happily. Without all of the horrors, the terrible horrors that we're so good at making. Sorry, I had to say that. Yeah.
Lucy, what you're saying, I want to connect with what Matthias was saying also. There's a movement in Canada and globally which has been termed two-eyed seeing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with that term. It's a Mi'kmaq term coming out of Atlantic Canada. And two-eyed seeing means looking at the world through Western science with one eye, and also with indigenous knowledge through the other eye, but not privileging one over the other.
Exactly.
But actually looking together and actually seeing that that's a deeper knowledge that both can contribute to our understanding of the world. So
to braid ideas together so each idea has its own, is not damaged by coming in contact with the other, but that through a sort of marriage of ideas you can birth a new way together.
And it's not a metaphor.
No.
It's you know, some people think, oh, what a clever metaphor, but it's actually a reality. Like both are true.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that requires humility, though, just to be able to, even, you know, what I said about wonder and imagination is really not new, is it? I mean, indigenous communities have been doing that for years, and also teaching death, you know, through life, like really through nature, to be able to see that there is a cycle for everything to end, but it really takes humility to even see that, to be able to make those connections, like you're saying, that some things have existed for generations, but we have to have the curiosity and humility to be able to listen.
Yeah.
And to know that they have existed and to say, okay, can I learn from you, which I don't think happens as often as it should.
Thank you. Matteo, I heard you are a quantum physicist. The beginning. We heard a couple of times over the conference so far this, we need a change of course. But my humble understanding of quantum physics would say, well, there is no cause, is there?
It's a bit of a rabbit hole of a topic, but
good question.
I mean, it's. I don't want to dig too much into quantum physics. I think there are a lot of analogies and a lot of speculation that are extremely interesting, a bit unscientific, like difficult to challenge scientifically. What I rather prefer to say is that I totally agree with you, and this, I think, poses a very clear challenge to actualize this marriage, this merging of these two cultures. Because from my perspective, one of the biggest problems now science has today, especially with quantum physics, for example, is that science has gone so far that people have no idea what science is about today. There are thousands of researchers publishing millions of scientific articles that are absolutely inaccessible to the most. Even for researchers, if I take an article if I try to read an article for another research field from mine, I'm barely able to understand what it's talking about. It's
amazing to hear.
That's what science is today. And I mean, science is far from scientists, and it's even further from population. It's not, scientists now talk to scientists, do not talk to people. And this is a great problem, I think, that on one edge has brought us to great comfort. It has brought us hospitals, it's brought us planes, Wi-Fi, computers, artificial intelligence, something we cannot think is not benefits for our society. There's aftermath to that, which I'm not denying, but these are benefits to our society. On the other edge, it pushes us very far from what is science. And my interpretation is that since we do not understand what science is anymore, we kind of rely on that to solve our problems. Because, like, I mean, something mystical far that people know how it works, but they will fix it. I'll bring as an example the hole in the ozone sphere. There was a problem, scientists fixed it. No people, people didn't, there was a really clear understanding of maybe what was the problem, how the solution. We just rely on science to solve this kind of problem. And this is like a general attitude, a general assumption that I think we have kind of broadly. This is our side, so great scientific advancement, but really far from society. What your point of view, I think, is beautiful and super interesting because, like, there are people who live deeply connected to nature, but maybe have a less amount of scientific knowledge. I think knowledge is really the key word. They have different kind of knowledge. So I think on one edge, like, saying that science is wrong and we have to leave it or like to forget about it, I think it will be impossible at this point. But rather the question is, can we learn from these people, merging with our actual situation, a new posture toward nature that kind of mixes the two? What could this posture be? What is the role of humankind now that can, like, balance in these two?
Yeah, well, I think, so for me, science is a particular method. It's a particular way to understand the world, just like other ways are. but it's just taken dominance at the moment, and I don't think that doesn't have to be a problem. The idea is to try and work together. And so the other thing that I should say, as well as being an anthropologist, I work for UNESCO Most Bridges, which is a program which is designed to bring different knowledge systems together. So its purpose is particularly to find ways for the humanities and the arts to speak with all the sciences, but also for indigenous knowledge and all of the untapped wisdom that's everywhere in the world, in communities, in arts centres, in play schools, in everywhere, to be heard, to be amplified, to work together, to think better questions, and to work to find solutions that are not only human-centred, because I think it's a multi-species perspective that we need to adopt. So it's not just about human being exceptional, but about all species needing to thrive together. So the issue is that there is a dominance of a particular method, and that, you know, even governments say we need to follow the evidence now. It's become, so instead of follow your feelings or follow experience or follow something else, it's follow the evidence, and evidence doesn't mean experience. In that context, it always means some experimental evidence, some kind of quantitative proof. So this is about numbers and using quantities as a way to say this is true or this is real. So just to circle back again, and I don't want to privilege indigenous knowledge above other knowledges, because that would be disingenuous and a bit daft. You know, we can't do that. But what happens when it turns out that we all live in very different worlds? How can we live in worlds together? Like, how can that be possible? What can we do to create dialogues, to see these differences? What questions, therefore, do need to be asked together in these different ways? So not, you know, science is brilliant. You know, it's brilliant, it's clever. You know, it's amazing. Art is extraordinary too, you know, but we privilege one side. And I think it was Nietzsche who said, when things defy explanation, turn to art. Well, you know, it can make you think again. It can make you feel, you know, an experiment. And if scientists don't even understand their own articles, well, there's something wrong. But I'm sure that's not true of everyone. But there's a power there. There's a power that we feel physically that maybe doesn't come from numbers, maybe.
And how does that inform our understanding of a human revolution?
Do we do a little dance now? Do we all get up and dance?
Well, I just wanted to respond to you, Lucy, again. And, you know, I'm not anti-science either. I was trained as a scientist. But,
yeah.
You know, I think often, you know, I would refer to what you were saying as the technological fix. You know, we fix things.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant, that we can fix things technologically, but it's not enough. We also need the cultural fix, you know, because often when we solve one problem, it creates another problem, you know, and then we're constantly in a cycle of fixing technological problems without the reset of our mind and our culture to value, you know, all life rather than just human life.
Yeah. I would agree fully with that. Addiction to techno-fixes and the billions that get put into creating these techno-fixes that humans can't get behind. And it's, you know, it is a problem. But nevertheless, I'm very happy that if I break my leg, somebody can help me and so on. So I you know, there's some things that we can definitely agree are good. Yeah.
Time for a poem, I suppose. Ooh. I've got one here from a German romantic, Joseph von Eichendorff. Sleep's a song in things abounding that keep dreaming to be heard. Earth's tunes will start resounding if you find the magic word. It reminds us of an old distinction between logos, the word that can be spoken, and the melos, the melody that we only hear, as sort of the whole of our experience. We can talk only about those things we have words for. But there's so much more to our experiences than that what can be captured in words. Is that an opening that brings us closer to the human revolution?
I have a question, maybe loosely based on that, but as somebody who's now found herself in academia, I hesitate to call myself an academic, but I wonder if the intellectualization of everything, every word, every single aspect of our lives, every mystery that was a mystery at one point in the universe is really causing us to lose sight of what matters. I don't know, this is really genuinely a question to everybody, to fellow panelists.
We have an eager hand over there in the podium, and I think we initially had a limitation to say, because it is live streamed and everything, we cannot have questions from the audience because the people in the live stream wouldn't see the people who are asking questions. So, no, that is not acceptable. We want to have a conversation not only here on stage but with you as well. So I saw the hand here, and may I invite you to come up to the stage and use that microphone over there to ask your questions or give your comment. And by the way, who are you?
Very much. Great discussion. I'm really enjoying every single thing that's been said.
Welcome.
I just want to really touch upon what Matteo said about scientific advancement and what you rightly said about quantitative advancement as well. And I think that's pretty much been the issue with our problems that we are facing right now as a human race, is because we are very much quantitatively inclined with everything that we do. We require a balance of quantitative and qualitative, where we can actually feel, we can actually imagine, we can actually perceive, as opposed to just having the evidence, as you rightly said. And I think all of this really would start at our schools, and the schools where we really need to bring education, where we need to really bring children to learn, to feel, to experience, more than just learning about quantitative elements of education. And I think this human revolution that we want to aspire towards will actually start in our schools and education system, basically. So just wanted to touch upon that, but also what you said about intellectualization. And I think that's a really key point, because you're right, everything's been intellectualized, and I think it all, so again, that also comes down to the advancement of quantitative thinking, because quantitative thinking is logical, while our qualitative is spiritual, you know, and we kind of, because of our human survival instincts, we feel quantitative is more culturally accepted because it can be proven, while subjective, qualitative experience cannot be proven as easily as quantitative. And that's why we have moved very much into quantitative quantitative beings and really disregarded qualitative, subjective experiences. And then just to touch upon what Matteo said as well, Einstein himself said that the science has been all about cosmic religious experiences. For a scientist, cosmic religious experiences are the most important. I'm not quite sure, you're a quantum physicist. Have you heard of Max Planck? Even he said something like similar to that. He said, like, all science comes from subjective, qualitative experiences, basically. So I just wanted to touch upon that. So thank you.
Thank you so very much. Who wants to resonate with that?
Oh, do you know what? I want to, but I feel like I speak too much, so perhaps I shouldn't.
So pick someone from the podium.
Well, does anybody else want to?
Yeah.
But yeah, what about you?
Yes. I was blending in with the furniture. Oh. I like that resonance that is now in the room, to say there's a great value in trying to understand the world with a different perspectives, with going to, well, the formal science that we have, but that has a tendency to exhaust itself in the quest for knowledge, not for understanding. Understanding is so much more, and as I was referring to in the beginning, understanding, and here comes the environment again, understanding is always an understanding in a context. Context matters, and context changes. Hence, our understanding is an evolving understanding. It's impermanent and growing at the same time. Out of our understanding grows new understanding, a new context, and to embrace that as an autotelic and dialectic process, a process that has no beginning and no end, and that is meeting the not yet understood over and over again. And in that meeting the not yet understood, having a relationship is a true relationship when both sides change. Out of the in-between grows a new understanding that allows us to widen our gaze, and in that widening of our gaze is a widening of our embrace, a widening of our heart. So that is what resonates with me.
I'll add to that. I think, if I were to critique the post-secondary system, not just science or anything, we're becoming, these kind of micro-specialists, and actually what we need is more generalists, because, your point about not understanding other scientific journals is a case in point. We become, we know more and more about less and less. We go down this tunnel. And I often share this with my students. I'll pick an alder leaf and I'll say, do you know why this alder leaf is this color of green? And they'll look at me like, well, what are you talking about? And I say, well, there's a PhD thesis in the chloroplast that is making this leaf green. And somebody could write thousands of pages and spend 7 years just answering that one question. But that wouldn't answer all the other questions about all the other relationships that are existing with this one leaf that's here. Yeah. So we have this amazing complexity, and many of us are just going down this rabbit hole of, understanding so much about so little. And what we actually need to do is learn more, or, more general things about all those things that are in between, right? That is what ecology is about, the in-between things. How these things, the web of life, how are we connected? How are humans connected to that? What's the connection between me and that color green? That's a good question.
Okay. If can I connect? Thank you. If I can connect to this also, thank you for your question, because I think it was really interesting also what you say. I want to bring together your point, and your point, and also what you said before, to something that I think is often forgotten, that science is this grey machine that does just provide quantitative analysis and numbers that surely works well, but is bringing us to the brink of collapse. So it's not working that well, actually. It's not an actual separate entity. Science is made by humans. And these humans want to be happy too. These humans want art, want happiness, want connection with nature too. And all these humans resonate with the same values. And that for me is, and as you were saying before, you asked your question, sorry, I don't remember your name, sorry for that. I think it's really deep and meaningful, because it's not that science is done with experiments, with a lot of things, but with a lot of ways, but there's always a component of wonder, imagination, creation, fantasy, which is inherent in our human being, in our inner child. And so I do think that science has become detached from society, detached from humanity. And this lack of humanity in science is what bringing this kind of pushing, this kind of like marketing mentality of science is what is bringing science, nature far from humanity. And I do believe that human people are the bridge to bring back science to humanity, for the people. Because they are people. Like, the human revolution, a single human being, a single scientist, is what can really bring back science to be connected to what's actually important. Connected to asking back to people without, I think is important part, not giving up all the great wondrous discoveries we made in the last century, decades, or whatnot. I think human beings are really the bridge over here, and education is surely fundamental, either in ethical responsibility, either in social responsibility of science. Not separate, but really, really both important. Thank you.
I think it's also worth bearing in mind that the capacity to imagine and have a sense of spirituality is actually very closely linked to the ability to understand numbers. Our ability to think theoretically about something, to think and to imagine in the abstract without proof, is actually connected to numbers, because numbers don't exist. They're just like love or spirit. Show me a number 4. There isn't a number 4. It's a way we think about the world. This is what I mean about the logic underpinning the way we ask our questions. So numbers are as spiritual as spirit. And you can look at how scientists and great thinkers sort of fall into philosophical holes thinking about all of these ideas and how they're used to shape our lives. So there's some fantastic work done about how people categorize and put things into sets, and how you get to a paradox at the end, because you want to categorize everything into sets until you realize that when you do that, sets disappear, right? So this is the enormous, fantastic, exciting creativity of the mind. Spirits and numbers holding hands together. It's nice. Yeah.
I've got your number.
The human revolution is an answer to the state of the world. Back then, 40 years ago, we have been living in a different world. Our world today is described as a world in polycrisis, a crisis of all the relationships of human beings with the natural world, like in climate change, loss of biodiversity, in their relationship to themselves, as in a global mental health crisis, the relationship to each other in all these geopolitical conflicts that we see burning as we speak. We can reframe that as a crisis of governance, but in its very, very core, it's a crisis of humanity. So, what do we do? What kind of human revolution is due today? How do we meet all these elements of the polycrisis? What kind of human revolution can that be? And that shall be sort of the further course of our panel here, after we allow ourselves to go to the understanding and the richness of understanding in science and spirituality, even in numbers, yet we're challenged. And how do we meet it?
She's got poems, going to sort everything out. Yeah.
I do have a poem, but it's right there in my bag. Can I?
Oh, no.
Can I just bother you to? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Slightly unorthodox, but human revolution at its finest.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's called We Carry It All, in the Spirit of Human Revolution. This is a poem I wrote quite a while ago. We carry it all in our hearts and in our bones. We carry it all, the weight of our stories, the songs of our dead, the summers of memories, the dreams we have tread. We carry it all, the spring of our healing, the words unsaid, the quiet of our breathing, a map to roads ahead. We carry it all, the fullness of our being, the stars we have read, the stillness of our suns, the hopes we have wed. We carry it all, the places we will go, the knowing in our bones, the wisdom we will grow, the wonders we will sow. Thank you.
There was a conspiracy between us to all have a poem. I haven't got one. Have you got a poem?
No, I don't have a poem.
Yeah. I do know a poem, though, which my father wrote, which actually weirdly chimes very well with some of the things I've been saying. So he wrote, "A man walking saw miles of teeth under feet, biting. His eyes paralyzed his nerves. He stood still and decomposed into the sand." That is how we follow each other and scare each other and get paralyzed and don't act. This is about asking different questions. Thank you.
I don't have a poem. I'm sorry. I don't know a poem. I'm really sorry for this.
So how do we meet the poly crisis then?
It's a very short poem in Italian with 2 words, but I don't want to use it. No, I'm happy also to conclude some words that I advocate for science, advocate for science responsibility, because I think it's something that is really penetrating our society and we cannot neglect this. But in doing that, I risk to seem turning my back to what I really think is important for our society right now, which is a deep change in our heart, a deep change in our attitude toward nature, society, toward ourselves, to our other species, which is human revolution. It started with ourselves, and it's not only about science, it's about everything. It's creative, it's exciting, it's beautiful, and it's something that really I want to see happen in my lifetime. I'm really determined to see happen in my lifetime. I really think it can open a new paradise. Maybe on this, I have a quote actually I can read to you.
Hey!
It was all to build up to that. No, it's actually I really advocate for social responsibility of scientists. And the first time I really felt this deeply inside my being is when I read the Russell Einstein Manifesto. I don't know if you know about it. It's a manifesto written in 1955 by Russell Einstein and subscribed by many other Nobel Prize and Nobel scientists, blah, blah, blah. But this was the first time when I read it where I stopped and I think, what am I doing with science? What I want to do with my position? And I think you'll get why, because these are the closing words of the manifesto written for, in the context of nuclear weapons and the nuclear war. We appeal as human beings to human beings. Remember your humanity and forget the rest. If you can do so, the way lies open to a new paradise. If you cannot, there lies before you the risk of universal death. We do me, but really deep, I think. With this, I thank you very much. Sorry for the quiet.
We have another voice from the audience. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to the bar. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Bob.
All right, Bob.
I'd like to challenge, if I might. Yeah.
Sure.
In business, we have this sort of concept of the burning platform. Whenever you want to get somebody to spend money on something, you try and persuade your management that everything's terrible, that it all has to be changed tomorrow, and we all have to spend a lot of money bringing in consultants, bringing in people to change things. The fact that we've got, 8 billion, 9 billion people on the planet, compared to a few years ago when it was 7 billion, 5 billion when I grew up, illustrates that actually there's not that much of a burden platform. Humanity has become, bigger as a part of nature. But equally, we strive to try and understand nature around us better. I've been fortunate enough to live in different parts of the world, to experience different types of people and so on. And one of the things that came to me when I first got to Africa was a lady, my best friend actually, my wife acknowledges that, who said to me that the problem with being an African is that when you die, you become an ancestor, so you can never rest. And I think the concept of the now is given too much credence in our society. We've been around as a species, 400,000 years? The enormity of this universe that we live in, the enormity of the things which we have achieved in the short time we've been here, the enormity of the things that the universe have done without our help. Those all need to be acknowledged, and when we sort of look at our Buddhist philosophy, that's what we're trying to reach to, say, well, in that context, how do we as individuals become happy? And one of the ways to not be happy is, of course, convince yourself that everything is going to end tomorrow. It's not going to end tomorrow. It won't end next week. It won't end even the week after that, probably. I think our friend, the quantum physicists, say we've got another, 10 trillion years, I think it is, while the universe is going to continue its current state. So our context is what we see from where we are today. But if we were somewhere else in the universe looking at us, you think, what on earth are they going on about? And the last thing is, of course, systematization of, systemization, I can't pronounce it, is one of the biggest problems we've got today. One of the problems we get, I think, particularly as I'm old and fuddy-duddy now, is that when you talk to people, you often feel like you're talking to a call centre with a script. I think let's go back to what you were talking about at the beginning. There isn't really a clear answer to anything. I learned as a young civil servant, I worked in the Treasury, we spent lots of time targeting things, which the moment we started targeting them, they started misbehaving. Why is the monetary aggregate not doing that? Because we've proven the computer model does that. Why is it not behaving? Well, the answer is because we didn't know. We don't know where we started. Anyway, so that's my philosophy.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
But stay.
Can I make a comment? Yeah. I'd like to make a comment. It's not in direct response to the person, but it's something I've observed walking around Taplow Court the last couple of days. And I must say, I'm new to this community, but I really have admired what I've witnessed. I've really enjoyed this conference because what I see are people that are practicing what they believe. Like I've just have had some beautiful human relationships and friendships that are emerging out of this meeting. And I think there's a message in that also. I think that we model the world we want to see, right? So it's not just about talking about what is the solution, but when you come up with the idea of, well, this is how I should be as a human, then start acting that way. And that itself is an education, for the others around you. And I've been witnessing that, and I must say I have learned a lot while I was here, and I wanted to thank each and every one for their part in that, because I felt very welcome and enjoyed my time here. I'm very happy.
We have another question from the audience, and may we invite you up here on stage? Well then.
Can we attend to that challenge as well?
Thank you. It's
Who
a
are you?
question. Oh yeah, my name is Karima, and I'm so happy and grateful to be here with you all. I have a question, but the question comes with a poem.
Conspiracy continues.
And it's a poem which we are all going to live the verses of the poem. It's very short. It's a Rumi poem. So may I please invite you all, as you hear the words, to embody the words. It's very short. Close your eyes. Fall in love. Stay there. Thank you.
Beautiful. Amazing.
And now that we are all in love with life, in love with life, what would be the conversation? Let's go back 1 hour. We are all in love with life. We are all an embodiment of life in love with life. What would we be talking about today? With a beautiful facilitation of Louis and the so inspiring thoughts and heart-expressed ideas, experiences of all of panelists here today. What would you be talking about?
Thank you so very much, Karima. That is difficult to follow. And looking at the time, I think it allows us to have a final comment each to close this panel gently, softly, kindly, as we are invited, in love with life. Who likes to go first?
Yeah, thank you. That was a leveler. Amazing, the beauty of you and your words. I'm a mother and I fight to protect my children and give them what they need, what they ask for. And so I would still be doing the same thing, try to make sure that the life that we all need can manifest. So I'm afraid I'd probably still be fighting.
I think I'm feeling overwhelming gratitude. First of all, to Louis, because he brought us here with a very specific vision and intent, and that was to be, he kept telling us, be yourself. And that is a very, very authentic and very powerful way to bring human beings together. And I think it's so powerful because also it gives everyone here the opportunity to be who they are. And of course, just, the people working behind the scenes, everybody, but also this dialogue between Peccei and Ikeda, because despite being able to see everything so clearly and, the horrors and the enormity and the severity of the challenges, they didn't surrender their capacity for hope. And I think in the prevailing cynicism of the time in which we live, I think that's such a powerful message. And I just feel very, very grateful. So thank you to all my fellow panelists as well, and for everybody who arranged it. So, so much gratitude. And for everyone on live stream for joining us as well. Thank you.
Wherever they are.
I think that word love, it's powerful. Love first yourself, love others, and love the journey, love life. Thank you.
Thank you. I first want to thank you all also for this opportunity. Thank you for the people listening. Thank you, Louis, for our conversation yesterday. It was a very relieving conversation because, like, me and Ria, we never did a panel. So we were a bit like, what was supposed to happen? And then we had this beautiful chat and lunch table, and it felt out being, like, all the tension just relaxed. We suggested the idea of the bar, and it was like, it really changed the environment. So I'm glad this conversation went on a way less structured, academic manner, where everyone has to defend his position, his mask, as we were talking yesterday. And I'm really grateful for this, and I hope it was inspiring for you. It was inspiring for us to learn from each other and discuss from each other for our today's discussion. My final words for this maybe more refer to young people and young people that are listening to. Let's defend our future. Let's defend our future fighting. Human revolution, it's a revolution. It's not a mild change. Let's defend our future fighting. Thank you.
What if a human revolution was kind and soft and gentle? What if a human revolution was an expression of our humanity? What if a human revolution would be an expression of that love? We would meet the poly crisis, we would meet the crisis of humanity with love, allowing for an end of fighting against nature, fighting against ourselves, fighting each other, preparing for a soft landing. And this is what we like to pursue, the Club of Rome, the International Federation for Systems Research, to bring that to the global discourses, which are suffused with all kinds of fights, appeals, calls for action. What if the answer was love? Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Louis, Ria, David, Lucy and Matteo for that wonderful discussion.
It was a beautiful conversation.
Oh, we're not hearing us.
Thank you as well to wonderful contributions from those in the room as well. Thank you. So, this concludes the live streaming part of the event. I would like to share a big thank you to all of you from around the globe who connected online to be with us here this morning. We hope that you have enjoyed this conference, and thank you for taking part. So I'd like to thank as well, we heard from Suzanne at the beginning, and we heard from Carlos, and we heard from our speakers, and all of us here, really shared a big thank you from Taplow Court to the world. So we'll say a big goodbye to all those joining online. Thank you very much.
That was beautiful. I really enjoyed it.
So we've been sat for quite a while, and I'd like now to introduce Joey and Owen, who will come up together with Olivia.